All right. So my name is Duleepa Wijayawardhana. I have a very long name, and a lot of people mangle it quite a bit. I go by the wonderful name of Dups, and I really wish, you guys have a remote here for this at all?
No, we do not.
Okay. Okay. So you're probably wondering who the hell I am. Actually, I kind of expected only 10 people to show up for this, and I was going to say that if only 10 people showed up, and I said this on Twitter, we were going to go adjourn to the bar, and we would have a very informal chat about startups. But glad to see that more than 10 people showed up. And so the talk is going to be about startups and MySQL, but it can be as technical and as non-technical as you want it to be. So who uses MySQL today? Who uses it for 10, 20,000 people plus millions of people? Okay. Who wants a technical talk and who wants a non-technical talk? Who's part of a startup? Okay. Who's here because they're interested in putting MySQL into their startup or into their business at all? Great. Fantastic. Sure. I love it. My wonderful assistant, Rob Young, will be willing to do this. So yes, okay, so who am I? So I work for, I seem to have spent the last 10 years or decade working for startups which ended up getting bought, which I'm hoping happens to the last one at some point, or at least becomes as big as Google. So the first one was Wijayawardhana Corporation, which produces computer games. You might have heard of them of Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Mass Effect more recently, and these are all games I actually worked on. And then I left and worked for MySQL as the community manager. Wandered around North America talking about MySQL to crowds of 10 people or less. And then I left MySQL around about the time that the wonderful Red Stream people here called it, and went to start up Empire Avenue. And you have absolutely no idea what Empire Avenue is, and is there anyone who does know what Empire Avenue is? 3 people, one of whom is working for us. That doesn't help. So Empire Avenue is an influence scoring service which has a game in the back end, which is a virtual stock market where you can buy and sell virtual shares in anyone. So if you join, someone can buy and sell shares in you. It's a lot of fun. And the whole idea about it is that you create new connections through the buying and selling. You build a virtual empire with your virtual currency that you use, and you earn rewards. And I'm going to go through this because it actually tells you some of the data problems that we have even now at starting out. So the whole idea behind it is that social media has created a raft of content. You see your Twitter stream, you probably have 3,000 followers, you probably never even heard of your followers, or if you did, you don't read their stuff because you're just collecting them. And you don't know what's good content and what's bad content. And we believe that it's not content, that it's not the content that matters, it's the people who create the content. And the idea is that we will solve this problem by taking all your social media stuff, creating a simple economic metric, which is the share price, and then help you establish those new connections. And then finally profit from them, because we really want people to actually profit from all the things that you write about, all the things that you do online, and all the connections that you make. Now, the way we're going to do that is by running a whole pile of algorithms on all the stuff that you connect to us. That is Twitter, Facebook, Flickr, YouTube, what did I miss? Blogs, and more coming down the pipe. So these ones, they actually, the algorithms look at you automatically, all the stuff that you do, all your interactions, and you can imagine the amount of data that we get from that. And then, because people are engaging with you, buying and selling your shares, that gives a subjective value in a stock market like atmosphere, and that is what it is. Your share price becomes that economic signal that allows you to find those influential people. Now, in the real stock market, there's only, I'll tell you this because you guys are all database people, mostly I hope. In the real stock market, you have, let's say there are 30,000 companies total in the New York Stock Exchange. I actually don't know the number. And every day, you're open between 8 and 4 in the afternoon. And a whole pile of share trades happen, and overnight, you might have a bit of overnight trading, but not much. Then all the analysis is done on what happened during that day. Imagine scaling back. If each of you were companies, if we had 10 million people on there as companies, and all the data and all the analysis that needs to be done overnight, and your markets never actually closed, that is our world. So, we are very much a startup. We have 12 people across 2 countries. We're based out of Canada mostly, as you can tell, and also the one person from Denver who's actually here. So, now, startups are not created equal. So, all of these were startups at one point. And the reason I say this is that each startup has different data issues and data problems that they have to solve. And they also start up with a different mindset, a different vision, and a different way of doing things. And anytime you walk into a startup, you will be told how your company has to operate, how it has to work with the tools that they have, and how much money you have, and all the different things that go into the innovations that you come up with to try and do the things you have to do. That's why startups are beautiful, because we are limited in the things that we have to do, and you have to make them happen. You have to work miracles and keep everything running, and that is the beauty of startups and databases. We started with absolutely no capital. We actually did this on purpose. It keeps us hungry, it keeps us wanting to do it. So there were 3 founders, myself included, and we funded it completely. And we did this in, go to the next one, we started it up, and this is very important to realize what this means, is that it was created from the ground up to be a lean startup. And that's in quotation marks. It is a term, you can look it up, it will tell you exactly what a lean startup is and it is not. It is not necessarily a startup with no money. It is a type of business mentality, a type of business thinking that is coming to the fore in a lot of businesses, including teams that you might be part of in a very big corporation. And we do things in a very, very specific way, and it is why we use MySQL. It is a very, very good case study for why a database like MySQL is important. Now, a lean startup is not about money. It is not about how much money you have or do not have. It is about how speedy you are with releasing your information, or not necessarily information, but your product, your iterative cycles, your ability to iterate as fast as possible with metrics that you have. You do not wait to find out that you have done something wrong 2 months, 3 months down the road. You figure it out within 2 to 3 days. To do that, and I know Aaron is probably screaming at me because he's one of the web developers and designers, and we release, I kid you not, on a 2 to 3 day period. Features in a 2 to 3 day period. Yes. What's that, sorry? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know all these terms. I know what we meant, and we didn't even call ourselves this. We don't actually call it, we actually, that comes up after the fact that we created a company, we're doing it in this way of, basically it's agile methodology in a lot of ways. Then it was, hey, what kind of startup are we? And we realized we were a lean startup apparently. So investors told us. So yes, that was a good thing. So then the other part of this startup is that we run everything on the cloud. We try to. Everything has to be off of service that we own, or if we do own service, they're on the cloud. And that includes all of our database service and everything else. This is good and it is bad in a lot of ways, but I can tell you why. Our entire company is also completely remote distributed. We are 4 people, four places in the world. I come from the great MySQL background where I actually literally did one day spend time working at 4,000 meters in a mountain working for MySQL. And we like that and we want that to continue. So it is a remote distributed workplace. This also presents challenges in how we actually run our databases and how we actually deal with our data issues. But we have a lot of fun. We do things that are a little insane, including hopefully not being chased down the streets of Montreal for wearing a board. I was told in the morning before we did this that if they caught us, they would put me in jail. So we were running from street corner to street corner. Anyway, so MySQL is ideal for a web-based startup. It is insanely ideal. Oracle is not so much. Not saying that Oracle will not be part of us in the time as we go on, but right now it is not what we need. in our case, and in most web-based startups, this is where startups are not equal, our data rules the company. You can imagine the amount of data that we actually go through, and even from a small subset of users. I'll get into that. So the data from our users, data statistics. We're a lean startup. It means that we have to actually look at statistics and metrics that you might not even think about. And we need to understand that data to understand what our users are doing without them even telling us what they're doing. And that is the whole point of this. And I tell you that we're a game that comes very close to being part of real life, and that's very important because we actually, in our mindset, we see, or at least I see, data management as a game, and it is a game staying ahead. You reach certain levels, you know what those levels are, and as soon as you hit that level, you know exactly what kind of level you need to get to. And it really does fit these business goals and the goals of a young startup. And the entire idea of a lean startup or any of these methodologies is that you build the thing fast, you deploy fast, you fail and you learn fast, and you iterate fast. We have now gone through, if we're on version numbers, we're probably at about 250. I don't know. I don't even know how to count anymore with those. The site has gone through 4 major revisions and 4 major things in less than 4.5, 5 months. And that includes 3 different design changes to learn. Some things we deploy very fast. So as soon as we have an answer, we deploy the feature, we put it out live, we look at the metrics, all stored, and then we fail it. Is it good? Is it working? Within a week, within 2 weeks, if it doesn't, we learn, we go to the next thing. And then that is the entire idea of the iteration process as well. It is stressful, but it is incredibly productive in how fast you can develop a site. So, and I would say that this is important about any database situation and any data situation, is that failure is to be celebrated because it is the most important thing. Except when you're MySQL, and this is supposed to be on keynotes, if you would have seen this, it would have been a joke that everyone would have laughed at, unless your MySQL master server goes down, in which case you actually celebrate with good beer or running around screaming. And so now we're getting to the meat of why this is, and we can get into as technical as you want, so feel free to ask me. The only things I can talk about are very specific in terms of how the data is structured or stored in some instances, because there's some proprietary stuff there, but outside of that, I can pretty much tell you exactly how the data is stored and what we're going to do. We have 20,000, we're getting close on 20,000 people right now since the last 2 months, 3 months. So you can see also the scale. We launched July 28th with 3,000 people, so we're at 20,000 in 2 months, 2.5 months. We haven't started scaling yet, and we're going to start scaling even more, and hopefully going viral, which means that that 20,000 will hopefully grow much faster than potentially our servers are able to handle it. Now, the whole point of a web-based startup, unfortunately, is that 80% of your resources are spent managing data, managing connection data, if nothing else. But I would say that 80% of your resources in a startup like ours, you should be spending managing and developing your product. That is the key. If you're not managing and developing your product and you're spending time wondering if the MySQL servers are coming down, you're probably you're looking at the wrong things. So I would say 20% of your time should be spent on what the heck is running and how it's running. And MySQL in that sense for me is ideal, because with very little know-how, you can get that thing running and tuned enough for what you need to do to get your product to the next stage, not worry about the back-end data. And I think that goes for any team as well in any large organization, because your team should be focused on getting your product out the door. That is how important it is. Minutia of data management is not the case. Our schema has changed dramatically. In fact, the schema has been dropped completely and redone as we learned more about how our users were interacting with the data. And data management in a social network, and we are a social network, no matter what. You know what, social networks have been around before the social network, which is Facebook, and you're missing Mark Callahan's talk, is that social network is anywhere where one person connects to another person. That could have been a forum, that's a social network. And data management in a social network of any kind is non-linear. It is just not linear enough. And so the So what you have and we face this, is what you have at 100 users does not scale directly to what you will have at 200 users. In fact, it scales to what you will have at 500 users. 500 users, you're actually scaling to 1,500 users. At 20,000, we're scaling to what you would have in a normal data storage requirements of 100,000. And I can guarantee you, with 17,000 users and 15,000 transactions happening every day, and plus other connections that are happening, all the tweeted, something like 150,000 tweets are collected by the system. You can imagine that our data size for 17,000 to 18,000 users is now well over 12, 13 gigs of data. That's just the raw data that we have. And that's not including the new indexing service you put up there yesterday. That's another 2 gigs of stuff. So it is just not linear. And the problems that we're going to encounter at 1 million users is fun. So why MySQL? It's open source. We have no capital. Can't start buying huge amounts of service. No licensing fees, no financial headaches. Hardly any salesperson calls us, mostly because I actually know the salespeople, so probably wouldn't call us. But anyway, so the whole point was concentrating on building the product. And the other reasons is, of course, we're going to deploy the servers running on cloud. We run on branch-based cloud servers. They're scalable. For us right now, that it works out really well. We obviously run a replicated database. It's easy to manage. Between myself and one of the other guys, we're able to manage the servers that we have, monitor them. We have our own monitoring solution, which we developed at Bioware, which is open source, and runs all of our servers. But yeah, again, easy to manage. And it's relatively easy to get great performance quickly without great experience. Now, keep in mind, when I talk about it, we've been working with MySQL for 10 years, and we scaled it. At Bioware, we ran the entire community there on basically 3 or 4 servers for 8 million people. To be honest about that, we were so cheap at Bioware at the time. We were running servers inside of closets, and we were running MySQL 4.0 when it was just released and it was beta. So MySQL can be great. It absolutely can be great. With some minor tweaks, you can get it to run. You need your application developers to understand that, because when they do, then it becomes a match made in heaven. If your application developers are working with your database designers, your schema designers, and whatever else may be, and you're willing to do some neat tricks, which in every program you have to do some neat tricks, you're going to get some great money out of it very fast. So it removes the critical human resource sense, and it's great for failing and iterating fast, for testing and idea after idea, deploying idea. If I have to call a database manager to say, or an admin to say, hey, you know, can you drop the database, or can you change the schema, or can we test the schema, it probably wouldn't have worked as well as we have. And yes, we've made some mistakes. There have been, I don't know how familiar you are with Linux, but cron jobs or whatever, running on some of the data, which have run into 4 or 5 hours looking at simple data that could have been solved with a simple index change or whatever the case may be. And sometimes we're too busy to actually even notice it. Even though we have monitoring systems that let us know, we kind of get into the point of, yeah, I know it's a problem, I keep getting a message every 3 hours, that's a problem. But you never fix it until you absolutely have to. But out of those ideas, out of those iteration ideas, allows us to think about what we're going to do in the future. And the other reason that I love MySQL is that if you're not part of the, who's part of the MySQL community? Who knows what I mean by the MySQL community? It's 3 of you. You know what? It's amazing. I used to joke when I was doing a set of talks with Giuseppe last year as we went to the universities that when you search for MySQL on Google, you actually get as many results or more results than Madonna. And it's true. It's still the case. 90 million results in Google. And that tells you something. It tells you that you have an amazing community. It means that when you need help, you know, someone out there has run into this problem already. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If your entire time, your entire product, your entire dream is resting on getting that product out the door, then go ask somebody And the MySQL community will help, they'll answer that question. Amazing community resources through Planet MySQL. Like when someone like Mark Callahan at Facebook is giving you ideas on how to run a database with 500 million people in a social network, they're hitting data issues that nobody in history has ever hit. Chances are very good. And so when those articles are there, you should take advantage of it. And that's something that is amazing. The amazing community enhancements and tools out there, the Pentapos, all the other partners that MySQL has produced over the years, and of course the amazing documentation. I can't go into how great database documentation MySQL actually has when you need to get something done, depending on which version you're on. Yeah, that's absolutely. So to finish up, and we can go into, like I said, as much technical stuff and as questions as we want. When you do a startup, when we started this, and I left MySQL, most people thought I was insane. And someone tells me that there is actually Aaron told me today that there's an article in the New York Times today about manic CEOs, how CEOs are actually completely and utterly insane, and how the new breed of CEOs are even more insane. And so the number of people that have told me that we were insane to do this, and still tell me on a daily basis that we're insane, is quite high. And when I started doing this, you run into a number of emotions when you do MySQL and a startup. So I thought it's a bit of fun, but I'll talk about the 5 different emotions that come out in doing startup. If you have never done or run a startup, if you have, you'll understand this very much. So the first is pride. Because the first day you get your MySQL server running and your data and everything is working and your application is connecting, you've got so much pride. And in our case, when we got our Empire Avenue, the first version up, and in February, it's so much pride and so happy that we actually managed to get this out the door within 2 months, which is really cool. The next one is surprise. Because you spent a lot of time working on that MySQL server. You got it up, you got data coming in, and on top of that, you suddenly realize that people are actually using it. The very first day that we turned on Empire Avenue, we had 200 people who were friends of mine, and of course the very first thing they did was to buy me, which was great, except each buy actually caused an email, and then some, and basically flooded my email system. Very soon thereafter, I wrote a digesting system for the mail. But it is a surprise that so many people actually care and will actually use you and will use you in different ways than you thought it was. So the next one that you have is despair. Because now you have all these people using your database and creating your data and using your data, and they're using it in ways that you didn't expect it to be used. And suddenly you despair because you realize that if you're at 17,000, you reach 1 million, what the hell's going to happen to you? And that's a lot of despair. And that is what we're going through right now, because if our data sizes continue at the rate that we are in for some real serious trouble. We hope that is a good serious trouble that we want to get into eventually. So it's always good. And the last one, elation. Because when we first solved our first data issue, we thought, wow, this is fantastic. This is going to be good for the next 100,000 users. Yeah, no. That lasted until we hit 10,000 users. And then we had to find another solution. And so the next one is where we are right now, which is fear. So this is where we look at our data structures and data sets, and we look at our data connections. And yeah, MySQL 5.5, yeah, apparently 1,024 connections, that'll be great, that's fantastic. Yeah, that'll help maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of fear going in right now as to what will happen when we have all this data and we have each of these people. Every person that connects so much data to us that, and it is a lot of analytics, a lot of data warehousing as well. So that actually is my full presentation. Look at that, and we got lots of time to talk. And that's the whole point of this, is presentations are fantastic, but you got to walk out of here and say, you know what, this is going to be good for me. What is it about this presentation that will help my business case, my business scenario, and stuff. So ask me questions, or I can keep talking. Believe me, I can talk till the cows come home. Just have to use paper for that, especially on our 1 hour phone calls, which never last 1 hour. So who has questions? Who wants to run out of here? So, all right, well, I can talk about data issues. I can talk about data issues until the cows come home. So, what are we going to do when we have 1 million users? That's the question that everyone's going to ask. And that's the question that investors ask me. So, okay, so you have this much data already. That's great, fantastic. Now tell me, what are you going to deal with when you're going to have 1 million users? How are you going to scale this? How are you going to scale a site like this? And we're not talking about scaling getting the users. How are you going to scale it when you have not 15,000 trades happening, but you have 150,000 trades happening? And everyone needs to know their close price, and everyone needs to know what their current value in their share price is. Because these are all real-time data. It's all real-time. You buy, the stock goes up. You sell, the stock goes down. And it's very real-time. The answer is that we're going to have to federate. And the answer is that it's not just MySQL. So MySQL is fantastic. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I can't speak more highly of MySQL. I've been using it for 11 years. I love it. But MySQL is only one part of the equation. For us, Memcache is super critical. The entire site would not work without Memcache. What we do is almost everything that you do on the site is actually thrown into key value pairs into Memcache and drawn back by the output application based on what we need to do at the time that it needs to be done. It means that we have to keep an eye on exactly how that Memcache stuff is being stored. The entire site's language files are thrown into Memcache. The entire site's language files. And we're in the middle of launching a Translate project for the site as well. So every language is there. It's available real-time in memory, and every string is cached in and out as need be, which is great. Works very well. I wish it were there 10 years ago. When we get to 1 million users, already we're having issues with the amount of data that we have. For instance, every stock point has a history. Every influence score has a history. And that history goes back as many times as you can think of. But of course, everyone wants to see graphs on that data. So we use huge amounts of summary tables, sure. But the next is partitioning. I can tell you that I'm not an expert in MySQL partitioning. That I leave it to one of the other guys. But and if you want expertise on MySQL partitioning, you should talk to Giuseppe. But for us, that is going to be absolutely critical. Some of these tables are running into a gig. So, and these are, I mean, we have obviously summary tables that are not in the main database, and we have all sorts of other things. But that's one aspect of it. And the third aspect, which we knew at the start, so we're lucky compared to a lot of other companies that may start, get scale, and then find out what the hell they're doing, is that having spent so much of my life talking about scaling MySQL, when we started the project, we actually used our own framework. We created a framework very specifically that one day we will actually open source, yes. And the idea behind that framework was that if by some sort of miracle, and remember in February we thought that we were basically on a 3-month home project that would never actually see the light of day and no one would ever fund us. It is built to be federated. And the idea is that all of the entire site, the entire group of people, can be put onto its own master-slave replicated servers at a moment's whim, moved around, do what we need to do, and let everything work. Every night, for instance, when you sign up to the site, you get earnings for being active on social media. So let's say you tweet 10 times today. You'll get some virtual currency the next morning. And on top of that, all your shareholders, all the people who've invested in you, who said, yeah, you know what, I like this content, or their content, they're going to get a dividend. They're going to get some virtual currency from doing that. Now, in order to do that, you have to span across all the servers if we're going to do that. We need to know where you are in each aspect of it to give you that money. But the beauty of having to have dealt with it before is that, yes, We are going to federate, and the systems will be lined up in such a way that we can move the users around. So there's 3 goals that we're going to have to scale. Yep.
So you say that you are going to federate. Are you going to use MySQL for storage or not?
Yes, we are. We are going to use MySQL for storage with Memcache. Yeah. But the beauty of any startup these days is that we have options to use any like Cassandra, or we have other options. Anyway, sorry, someone else?
Yeah. Is a big startup company leveraging the cloud with regulated resources provided by Workspace? Is there any downside?
Well, there's actually a giant downside to Rackspace cloud servers, and it is a fear that we have right now, is that their cloud that the servers are running on is one machine, and that one node goes down. They cannot actually migrate you to another node. Okay, that's one downside of Rackspace Cloud. That's the Rackspace Cloud. And we're using Rackspace Cloud because we like the pricing model, and we like the technical mind that they have in how they actually set it up. So that's a good thing for us. But that is one of the giant issues that. So if something, and this actually happened to Rackspace about a month before we signed on, so we knew about it, is that one of the nodes went down, and the node took down all these servers, and they could not get them back up fast enough. So if you are running a mission-critical application, you have to look at every cloud solution out there and how your application is structured. For us, the Rackspace Cloud works. Whether we continue to stay with them or whether we continue with another cloud provider, we don't know. It will depend on how again, iterate, you fail. Wonder how it works out. And there's lots of cloud solutions out there. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, yeah.
You said earlier that you have a short release timeline for your version. How do you manage the QA? How do you ensure that your product is quality ready for production?
Well, the answer is that the smaller your release, the faster your QA. So if you're going to change the word A to B, and that is the only change you make, your QA is very simple. If you, however, change 20 different things, and now you have to regression test everything. So you keep your builds, you keep your release, your branches, whatever it is, very focused to one feature at a time, and very specific as much as possible. The sooner you have, and that also prevents scope creep, because if someone says, hey, you know what, it would be great to have this, and oh, why don't we add this, and why don't we add this, and why don't we add that, that branch gets huge. But if you say, no, this branch is for this, like today we changed some tabs on the site, that was the entire purpose of that branch. Once it was done, the QA testing is very simple. It can get difficult, and so we do have a 2 to 3 day release cycle for certain things, but some it's obviously 2 weeks. And then our users are the best testers right now. We're in beta, which allows us to do lots of different things that nobody cares about, and that's perfectly fine. Our users are amazing. Yeah.
This is a very broad question. When you guys chose to use MySQL, did you do any research on alternatives like Postgres or Oracle XE?
So basically, my former employees would have hated me for the rest of their lives if I chose anything but MySQL. So that is the quick answer to that question. And also, it really depends on the expertise that you have. So if 3 of the 5 people are very knowledgeable in MySQL, why would you choose something else? And that always comes down to when a startup develops, you leverage the knowledge that's in that startup. Otherwise, you have to start looking elsewhere for that knowledge. And if you're trying to be a lean startup, there's almost no question. In terms of, are we doing other research into other stuff? Yes, actually, for us, we're looking at how we solve all these problems, and it may be, and also, the truth is, we'll probably end up having an Oracle instance dealing with specific financial stuff data, and we know that. That's just the way it might possibly be. But it does not necessarily mean that we're going to give up on MySQL. In fact, I'd say 80% of our data will always be stored in MySQL. That's how we started. If you try to re-architect something, there's a great article about every company that's ever tried to re-architect at the low end, has failed, has lost market share, has died. We are too late now. We are at 17,000 users, 18,000 going, that's it. We can't architect again. But you know what, there's lots of other, yes, there's lots of other options, for sure. But I like